Hello everyone, and welcome to this new devlog episode. I got a new phone and a new haircut. I'm a new man. I just really have to stop improvising. I slightly changed my dev schedule, so now you have 6 days per devlog episode. I'm hoping this way we get to the end of this project faster. Not that I'm bored of it, I actually really enjoy working on this project, but I'm starting to get frustrated by my slow progress on Hidden Tactics, my main game I'm working to publish on Steam. So once this project is complete, I'll be able to put a heavy focus on Hidden Tactics. Anyways, let's start with a short recap of the previous episodes. For those of you who don't know yet, this is a community-driven project, so we started by defining the game's genre and mechanics, after I drafted some at random and submitted them to you through a series of polls. We then brainstormed on my Discord server on how to implement this dungeon crawler X automation game, and once we had all the major elements defined, I started developing the game with the dungeon crawling aspect. I created the dungeon generation algorithm and mob spawning system, and during the past 2 devlogs I've been focusing on the overworld, creating the production buildings and the workers, and building their AI. So if you're interested in this process, you can always come back to the previous videos later on. Now I just have to wish you a pleasant episode. Okay, so I completely forgot to record anything on day 13, so let me at least present you what came out of this day. First of all, thanks for your feedback about the jitteriness of the grid system. As some of you suggested, I just made the grid lines thicker, and now it works almost fine. As you can see, I created a whole new menu for worker management. In this first draft of a menu, you have 2 panels. The first one is the filter panel, where you can select which type of humanoids and which jobs you want to filter in the second panel, which is where you actually see the list of humanoids you saved. In this panel, you can see the type of the humanoid, his name, his job, what he's currently doing, and which building he's assigned to. I made the change job button functional, so when you click on a humanoid's job, it actually changes his job to a new one, and the AI is actually responsive, as you can see in this clip. Finally, on day 13, I adapted the haulers AI to also take in account how many haulers are actually assigned to a building. Before, haulers would stack all onto the same building and pass to the next one when its priority would change. And now straight away, the priority calculation works in a way that when there are already haulers assigned to a building, it actually decreases its priority. This results in a smooth evening out of the haulers between the building, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so the worker management menu I created on day 13 actually has 2 purposes. The first one is, well, to show the list of humanoids you have saved and what they're doing. But the most important function is to, as one of you mentioned in the Discord server, give the player the ability to reassign manually what their job is and where they're assigned. So to ease out manual assignment of buildings, I started by creating a free view mode. So when the player presses Y on the keyboard, the camera goes into free mode where you can move it around using WASD, and when you hover over a building with your mouse, I wanted to show the information about that building. I used a little trick for that, and I don't know if it's the best way, but it's a functional way. See that tiny little mouse sprite here? Well, when I get into free mode, this mouse sprite will stick to the mouse pointer, and it actually has a collider attached to it. Whenever this collider enters a building collider or a chest collider, I go fetch the information about this building or chest, and then I just stick it in the UI. As simple as that. I know I also just could have used a raycast, but at this moment I didn't think of this solution. Any of you experienced developers out there know which solution is best? Now, it's really cool to have a system working in game dev, but you also have to think about how to show this information to the player. That might not be the most fun part, but it's a crucial part for the actual player experience. In this example, for starters, when you're replacing a worker's workstation, I'm activating this new part of the production buildings UI, where you see which humanoid type is replacing the humanoid working in the building. For the hauler, I added these 2 arrows, one going in and one out of a building or of a chest, and when you're trying to assign a building to the hauler, it will add its icon in transparency on the building you're hovering. This is when I realized my humanoid UI was incomplete, because for the hauler, I want to give the player the ability to manually assign either the input building or the output building manually. And here I only have one button to assign a building. That will be a task for tomorrow. I've never really been into survivor likes. I've tried some of them. Vampire Survivors, of course, but also Soulstone Survivors. And I think what I didn't like in these games was the apparent absence of actual objectives. Of course, you have to survive as long as possible and kill the final boss, but except for all these dopamine rushes, when you collect all these little experience points, there wasn't much in, really. And I think most of the success of these games come from these dopamine rushes, or the adrenaline rushes when you escape from a huge horde. But after a few runs, I think I've seen most of what the game had to offer. But then I discovered Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. This is the game that reconciled me with the genre. First of all, it's set in the Deep Rock Galactic universe with so many references to that universe, and I've played a lot of Deep Rock Galactic, so there was plenty for me in here. But it's not only these references. This game adds an additional layer of complexity and strategy in the genre that I really appreciate. First of all, it's not just an empty flat world, it's a cave where you have these walls and your dwarf is able to dig in these walls. This is a crucial mechanic that allows for much more strategic pathfinding when it comes to escaping these hordes. One run is composed of 5 levels, and in each level you will have some secondary objectives. In the walls you'll also find some nitra, which is like a resource, and some gold, and these 2 resources allow you to upgrade your equipment in between each level. So that's another additional strategy layer. Will I collect this gold or this nitra, or do I run away from this horde? And I'm a greeter. There's many more mechanics I won't mention here, but all of this combines makes for a great experience. And of course, there's the satisfying explosions and the dopamine rush when you collect all the experience points. The core of the formula is still here.
Incendiary? Big word. I'll take it.
Day 15 was a very productive day, and the last one of this devlog. So I just mentioned manual assignment of the hauler's input and output buildings, but that's not the only reason I'm overhauling the UI right now. I want to add on each element of the UI a camera zoom button in order to move the camera to the element in the world, and a replace button of course to manually replace the building. The camera button was actually super easy to implement, as you can see here. I think it took me like 15 minutes or so that was super satisfying. Now, as you can see in this clip, I managed to differentiate the UI between the workers and the haulers now. The idea behind this is, as I mentioned earlier, to have one button to assign the input building and another one to assign the output building. This makes much more sense, actually. So I kind of struggled to do that honestly, and it's mostly my fault. To make it short, the main reason is that I'm using different words to refer to the same things in different situations. In my buildings, I use the words input and output inventories, whereas for my humanoids, I use the words source and destination buildings. This just creates confusion, and considering the fact I do have different but very similar systems when you're assigning a chest or a production building, this leads to a very high error rate. This is typically why when I'm trying to assign a source building, and I'm hovering over a chest, it shows the input inventory instead of the output inventory, and it actually assigned the destination building. Take a deep breath and let's get back to it. After I smashed my head a few times, I managed to get it to work, and the outline of the humanoid icon now even turns to green whenever the humanoid you're trying to assign is already assigned to that building. Should I drop everything to become a journalist? Maybe I should. Should I stop using this annoying tone? Tell me in the comments down below. This will help me increase my visibility on the YouTube platform. That's not even a journalist tone anymore, I just sound like an AI now. This will help me increase my visibility on the YouTube platform. Anyways, back to our game now. So the last manual control I want to give to the player on the hauler is to let him select the item the hauler will transport from a building to another. This was surprisingly easy to do. I think I'm getting the hang of this, of building a UI and then linking the systems to them. The system was up and running with no bugs. I can create a new route for my hauler, specify the item I want him to transport, and it just seems to work. I was pretty proud of myself. It was now time to finally start working on our main mechanic in this game, the Dungeoneers. So in this devlog, the Dungeoneers will be goblins, so I created the goblin humanoid type. I won't go into the details of the Dungeoneers AI because it's actually very simple. Building the AI and getting it to work took me like a few hours, and as you can see in this clip, the only thing missing is a way to show that the goblin is actually crawling in the dungeon. That was super simple, and look at them come and go now. Wow, I just actually can't wait to play this game. So the last time we went in the dungeons was on day 4 or 5, I think, and I was very excited to go back in there. However, a lot of things seem to have broken down. Okay, step by step. Actually, let me skip the part where I'm fixing that, because it's boring. Let's go straight to the moment where I'm adding the resource nodes, because yes, resources are dropped by mobs, but most of the resources looted from dungeons will be from resource nodes. I soon had a very basic system working for that resource node, where you can specify which items are stored in it, and how many are dropped on each hit. I just couldn't stand seeing the player hitting the tree with his swords and still collecting wood. That would actually ruin your sword very fast. So straight away, I added the system around the visuals, which allows to synchronize the correct animations depending on which resource node the player is harvesting. This is looking great, except for that funny little bug I wanted to share. No, but seriously, this wood chopping animation is just awesome. As a reminder, you can always grab the full MiniFantasy Assets collection in the description at an unbeatable price. Okay, so once the resource node object was up and running, I started working on the system to spawn these resource nodes in the dungeon. And to be honest, I just basically copied the system to spawn mobs in the dungeon, so that was super simple. And surprisingly, functional. Very unlike the next thing I tried to implement in the game. So you see this mono behavior. When everything is working fine, it should be written in blue, recognized by Visual Studio as a specific type from Unity. By the way, if I'm using the wrong terms in this section, forgive me, I'm not a computer scientist, I'm just a fellow user of tools made for game development. So for an unknown reason, mono behavior and all of the Unity specific keywords were not recognized by Visual Studio anymore. My first reaction was not to panic. I've had this problem a few times before and I know the simple fix. But here, it did not work. Okay, so I'll just dig a bit more into the forums on Google, see what other solutions are proposed. And I tried them all. I think I reached the 4th Google page, and then the results were just not relevant anymore. So after 1 or 2 hours, I decided to ask for help on my Discord server, and hooray, one of the members seems to be pretty aware of complex programming problems. Because at this point I realized this is not a problem I'm able to fix alone by myself. So we spent the next 5 or 6 hours together trying to fix this problem. And by the way, shout out to Walkerall for sticking with me all this time. It was really nice to have someone to share this frustration with. It's very frustrating not to know how to fix this. It's not a bug that, you know, you're really responsible of by the way you coded. It's something much deeper, like informatically linked, and it's completely out of my reach. So we tried a lot of different things, but in the end, what worked for us was to recreate the whole project from zero and try recreating the project piece by piece. This helped us identify which piece was actually the cause of the problem. So I first identified it was in the sprites folder. Then by digging down in the subfolders, I finally reached the source of the problem, which was just a text file that was hidden very, very deep in the folders hierarchy. And this for some reason was not accepted by Visual Studio, and it just broke down the link between Visual Studio and Unity. So that's it, that was the second half of day 16. I finished working late, my brain was literally melted down, and it took me quite a while to get over it actually. I think I've never been so happy to see just a word turning blue. Since I've started this devlog episode by reviewing games with satisfying explosions, let's now talk about Helldivers 2. This is a game that really wasn't on my radar. I haven't played Helldivers 1, although it's been on my wishlist for a while. And it's clearly a game I do not regret playing. So in this game, you play as a Helldiver, a protector of humanity, defender of Super Earth, and let's say it clearly, a brutal alien slayer. This game has many similarities with Deep Rock Galactic if you've ever played it. You team up as a squad of up to 4 Helldivers and you're sent on the surface of an alien planet to fulfill different objectives. What really sets this game apart from other PvE third-person shooters are the stratagems. These allow you to call in all types of support on the battlefield, from machine gun sentries and heavy support weapons to very accurate air support. And these stratagems are not just cosmetic, they're crucial to the success of your mission. You will not be able to survive without them, because the game is brutal. When you take damage, you usually take a lot of damage, and especially when it comes from your teammates. You will die a lot from team damage. You'll be roaming quite a few environments and biomes, and let's say it clearly, these are gorgeous. I can't talk about Helldivers without mentioning the universe it's set in and the humor, which I'm very sensitive about. Just the term controlled democracy is awesome, and it's all about fighting for liberty and freedom. They're just fully embracing the American vision of liberty and democracy. And I love that. I find it hilarious. To be completely honest with you, I haven't played the game a lot, but I've enjoyed every single hour on it. I think after a while, so in my case 20 hours, it does get a bit repetitive. Although you do have another type of enemies to fight, the mechanoids, I didn't really get hooked by the gameplay fighting the mechanoids. The game does come at quite a price tag, but if you're up for some very satisfying third-person shooter gameplay with huge explosions and democracy spreading, this is definitely a game for you. Since I had managed to fix this huge bug yesterday, day 17 started very well, but it would not last. I feel like I've said this so many times before. My first goal was to add the humanoids freeing mechanics in order to free them from the dungeons and then bring them to your factory. Adding this system was pretty easy, and then I actually reused my resource nodes and mob generation algorithm for the cage generation. After what I've been through yesterday, I was not ready for what was to come. Before I explain why my brain melted for the second time this week, if you're still watching this episode and you're enjoying this devlog series, and if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, feel free to do it now. It's one way for you to stay tuned on my next devlogs, and a great way to support my channel. We are slowly but surely reaching towards the 10,000 subscribers, and each one of your clicks gets us closer to that objective. So in Devlog 2, I tried building my own save system using an asset I had bought, which was really stupid, and then I realized I could just use my asset. And at that time, I used it for a very specific type of saving, whereas now I was trying to create a more general saving system. I want to save the whole state of the overworld, so that means which buildings are there, where the humanoids are, what they're doing, what they're carrying, where they're assigned. I want to save all that when I enter a dungeon, and I want to load it back when I exit the dungeon. If you're wondering what's going on here, I'm just fiddling with the save system. This again drove me crazy. Like, the asset is extremely powerful. I can't deny this. The asset is called Easy Save, and it is indeed easy once you understand how it works. And the problem I had was that the documentation did not cover my specific situation. This was very long, and I failed miserably to get it done by day 17. There's not much to say about day 18. I kept working on that saving system, and I did achieve a few things. When I exit the game and then I come back, the state of the overworld is indeed saved, the building's inventories remain intact, the humanoids' positions, types, jobs, and all of their parameters are indeed saved and loaded correctly. The building's positions and states are also loaded correctly. And cherry on the cake, when you save humanoids from the dungeons, they are now actually spawned as fresh new workforce in the overworld. However, and yeah, there is a however, I spent the whole afternoon just recreating the system, you know, where I actually save a dungeons run with all the items looted and the time spent in the dungeon. Well, this system was not functional anymore, so I had to adapt it to my new, more complete saving system. So this actually concluded day 18, but because I feel like I've lost a lot of time on bugs on this session, I threw in a few more hours during the next days, and yeah, I have to admit, even though I'm trying to avoid this, a bit during the weekend too. I slightly reworked the UI to show information about a dungeon. It now also shows how many humanoids there are to save in that dungeon and what type they are. And when you exit the dungeon, it actually updates this panel. So you can see how many humanoids left there are to save in that dungeon if you ever failed that run. I opened up new channels in my Discord server to let you name the humanoids. So if that's something you're willing to do, feel free to join the server. This is where most of the major decisions for this game are done. You have an exclusive early view of the development of my project, and if you are yourself a developer, you'll be joining a dev community, and that's super cool. And I also started working on the next major system for that game. To prepare it, I started creating the UI for a specific human whenever you interact with a human. In this panel, you'll find the humanoid name, type, job, task, equipment, and what this new system is all about, his hunger bar and energy bar. These two parameters will be important parameters that will directly affect the productivity of the humans, and I'm very excited to work on those mechanics. So see you in the next devlog episode for their implementation. This last week was extremely painful. I remember at the beginning of this adventure, in one of my first episodes, I mentioned hard times will come. Well, now officially, hard times came. My partner told me she never saw me this down, morally speaking, when I had this Visual Studio Unity bug. But now I've emerged from the shadows, and I'm ready to get some work done. However, the next episode will be in quite a while. Next Friday, I'm participating in the new MiniFantasy Game Jam. That's really a fun time, and I really enjoyed last Game Jam, so I'm definitely taking this opportunity. Is that because my Game Jam video is the most viewed video on this channel? No. My motivations are pure. 100% pure. So I think the next devlog for this series will be in, I don't know, like at least 1 month. But in the meanwhile, you'll probably have a new concept and a new prototype to test on this channel, so stick around. And wait, oh, what's that? Is that a play button I'm seeing here? You know what I'm about to do. Press that play button! What the hell is wrong with me?